Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Matthew Dickerson. Tech Talk. Tech Talk. Sit back and relax. It's time to talk technology.
Hello, intrepid adventurers, and welcome to another awe-inspiring episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Today, we're into firing the imagination centres of your brains. Today, we're seeking a practical purpose for quantum computers. We're also looking at a big change in how PET recycling happens, which should improve the sustainability of that resource no end. And for everyone who's ever needed to be in two places at once, we might just have a solution for you. But now, clear a space and pull your stool into the circle. Here's the man with the stories we came to hear. It's Matthew Dickerson. What's been happening in your world, mate?
Well, I'm very proud of myself, James. I've crushed the spirits of some kids in the last week.
Hey, there we go.
They
need to learn the lessons hard.
That's right, and I'm there to teach them, I tell you. There is a little concept known as the Science and Engineering Challenge.
Yeah, University of Newcastle.
Yeah,
and they do Rotary clubs, yeah.
Yeah, they do a fantastic job. You're right, there's a collaboration amongst Rotary clubs and university, and they go along and they have a range of concepts there where the kids get to think innovatively and think differently. And, of course, the favourite one, because it's very visual, is the bridge building.
Yeah.
You get given a range of balsa wood, a few materials, a bit of masking tape, some safety pins, not safety pins, normal paper clips.
Paper clips, yeah.
And just a few little materials there, and you're given the job of building a bridge. And, of course, then they have a trolley that goes across it and they continually add weights.
And there's a lot of theatre behind it too. So it comes at the end of the day and everyone's got to test their bridges at the end.
There is theatre. Because there's nothing better than seeing the bridge smash into the ground and the people go screaming. That's right, into the great hole below.
There's also that amazing tension, like, is this trolley going to get over the top of it or not?
Exactly.
And when it does, a big cheer goes up, and when it collapses, a big cheer goes up.
That's right, it's a cheer either way, isn't it? So I normally go along to participate and just encourage the kids, but I take a couple of engineers along with me. So we have the same materials as all the kids. But one of the things that I think is really clever in the whole process is that if two bridges, for example, have the same weight as they build up the weights across the trolley, if they get the same weight, then they weigh the two bridges and the lightest bridge wins. So the idea is to use as few materials as possible. Now, when I take a couple of engineers along, I say, ignore the weighing of the bridge. It doesn't look good if my bridge collapses.
There's so much pressure.
There's a lot of pressure.
You cannot let these kids beat the adults.
When you've got two engineers and myself, they're building a bridge. So I'm proud to announce that our bridge withstood the bridge buster, which is the maximum weight they have.
Yeah.
None of the kids' bridges survive the bridge buster, so we can cheer and say that we showed those kids how to do it. But I do like it because it is a bit of the theatre at the end, but also just the concept of here are your materials. That's it. You can't just go and get a bunch of concrete and pour into this bridge. You've got limited materials and see how you can design the bridge the best. And there's some radical designs in there. The kids try a whole range of different things.
Oh, I'm sure that the person who's running the engineering challenge is sort of watching it going,
what about
that's
that?
A good idea. We'll take that back.
And it's interesting. There's so many different ideas, but it comes back to good old-fashioned triangles as well. You see the bridges that seem to go the best use old-fashioned concepts where you've got some simple structural components that seem to work the best. But it is a lot of fun, and it is actually quite good seeing the kids, as you say, seeing they get one trolley across. Oh, it's pretty happy. They've got two weights on there, then they're getting excitement built up.
You start to see these things bow and buckle under the lower weights. You think,
I saw one, I haven't seen it before, where the bridge didn't collapse, but it bowed that much that the trolley didn't make it to the other side. And the person doing the rules, so the kids are going, well, our bridge didn't collapse, and he's reading the rules saying that the trolley must make it safely to the other side. So they got to have a couple of goes at getting the trolley across, but each time it went across, they just kind of rocked back and forth.
Sagged like a feathered down pillow.
That's right. But it didn't break, so I was impressed that it didn't break. But it was if you were driving a real car across it, you'd have a fairly steep uphill on the other side.
Well, I come from a family of engineers. I've got three brothers who are engineers. And, what I love about engineering is that there's a lot of calculations. There's a lot of maths that goes behind it. But there's also some tinkering. And I love that idea of, just play with it and see what happens.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. How will this work here? And you don't really get a chance to do that in that particular challenge, but I'm sure in general, I mean, I know.
In life.
In life, that's right.
You go and build it and you realise there's a chink in it. Well, we've got to fix the chink. How are we going to do that?
Yeah. So there's a bridge, the good old what's the one that swings?
The Tacoma Narrows you're talking about?
I'm talking about the one that swung from side to side with the wind.
Yeah, that's the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. There's black and white footage you can look up on YouTube of this bridge that, just resonant frequency of the wind as it was blowing through. And it was a fair sort of a showground ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there's a perfect example of tinkering. They went, wow, we thought we made it strong, but again, you get resonant frequencies and you suddenly get some drastic results.
Engineering's a cool thing.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, let's get cracking with the stories that we came here to tell. Well, these days, anything more technological than a blender contains a computer within it. And what good is a computer without a connection to the internet? Now, this story is going to do nothing to make conspiracy theorists comfortable, but have you ever stopped to think about the type of data that your car is accruing in your daily life? And who's it feeding that data back to? Okay, Matt, better get this over and done with. Exactly how cranky is everyone just about to get?
Well, I'm going to go back a little step there because you did talk about the idea that everything that you buy has got a computer in it. I love my yo-yos, and I used to go in all the yo-yo competitions as a kid, and you'd rock the baby and do the trapeze and all sorts of things. And I actually bought a yo-yo recently, and it had a little disclaimer on there. I couldn't use the yo-yo until I ripped off the disclaimer that said that I am solely responsible for any damage that might be caused by the yo-yo. And I went, what has become of society? Yeah. But of course, was I going to argue with this legal document and legal tag on there? Was I going to not use the yo-yo because it had this? Of course not. In fact, I probably didn't read the whole thing. I just ripped off and started playing my yo-yo.
Did you remember all your tricks from the 80s that you learned in school?
Well, I remembered them, but whether I could do them or not, that's the difference.
Walking the dog and the three-leaf clover.
Yeah, all sorts of fun things.
The loop, yeah.
Yep. So I thought that's a bit crazy, but that's the world we live in now. When you get to the stage where you've got something that's actually got a computer in it, whether it be your washing machine or your fridge or your phone or your car, you see all these same sort of disclaimers pop up. And, of course, what do we do? Yep, okay, I agree.
You agree with the terms.
That's right.
You can read them all, or you can just click in the box.
But the interesting part is if I read them all and I go, well, I'm okay with most, but clause 7, I don't like that. So can I just do a okay but? No, you don't get that option. It's either okay or you don't get it. Now, when you get your
you've got a paperweight.
Yeah, that's right. Well, in a car, you've got a big paperweight. Yeah. And so you get your car, you get your new car, and of course, most of them now have got all sorts of wonderful things they'll do. You click OK and on you go. But clicking OK, again, you don't get the choice to exclude some parts of it. Clicking OK can have some pretty drastic consequences. And there was a driver in the US, drove a Chevrolet owned by General Motors, and one time when he went to replace or renew his car insurance, he found he had a 21% increase in his premium. And he went, well, why is that? I haven't had an accident.
You'd be filthy.
Well, that's a fair increase. And so he contacted his insurance company and said, well, what's the go with this? 21% increase. And they said, well, we've analysed your driving behaviour and we think that you are a greater risk than we previously thought, so we've increased your insurance premium. What do you mean a greater risk? Analyse my driving. What are you talking about? What language are you speaking? And they said, we've got a 258-page report that detailed 6 months of your travel, 640 trips, and we found that sometimes you were speeding, you broke a little bit hard sometimes, you accelerated a little bit violently. So on this report, we think you're a higher risk, so your insurance premium's gone up. And of course, how did you get this data? What are you doing? I don't understand. Well, you agreed to give us this data when you got your new car.
When you clicked on OK, I agree to all the terms.
That's right. So it's pretty scary. Now, car companies, and that was General Motors, but many car companies are doing exactly the same thing. And the data goes to a data broker. So there's one data broker company that has a lot of these, but it's not the only one. So this particular company is called LexisNexis. No relation to the car brand Lexus, so it's Lexus, Lexis, LexisNexis.
That's a bit cheeky too, isn't it?
Well, possibly. I did wonder that myself, but I thought I'll leave that for the moment. So companies like Kia, Subaru, Mitsubishi, and obviously General Motors share their driving data with LexisNexis, presumably with the permission of all the drivers because they said okay to all those screens. And then if I'm an insurance company, I can come along to LexisNexis and I can say, could I buy some data of you? Certainly, we've got all this data. And I'd like some data on Matthew Dickerson. Sure, here's the data on Matthew Dickerson. Away you go. So that gets pretty scary when you start to think about that. Now, it's insurance premiums today. And one of the things that I thought is, okay, if I'm an incredibly safe driver, do I get the call from my insurance company and say, we're really impressed with the way you drive.
We're dropping your premium.
Can you see that happening?
No,
I don't think so.
absolutely not. This is an excuse just to.
It does seem like it. It does, exactly right. So insurance premiums go up, go down, maybe not so much. So that gets a bit scary. But how long before we start getting a speeding fine in the mail saying your car data, the dobber, told us that you were driving at this speed, so or you swerved violently or you're driving dangerously. So you end up in a courtroom saying to the magistrate, a dog ran out on the road, so I swerved violently on the other side of the road and braked hard to avoid that it wasn't dangerous driving. It was either run over the dog or take evasive action. Well, we don't have the vision of the dog, but we have all the information about the way you drove the car. Now, I know in a couple of my cars, I've actually gone and downloaded the data that I'm assuming, but maybe incorrectly, has not been shared with anyone else, but the data on my car that I can go and see. And it's quite incredible. It tells me exactly how far my accelerator or brake was depressed at the time, how far the steering wheel angle was at any point in time, the speed I'm travelling at. So all of these different components of the car. Now, that's fantastic if there's an accident, so you can have that data there and see who might have been at fault in an accident. If you're a perfectly safe driver, you should have nothing to worry about. But there are times you might be overtaking, and for example, on a 110k speed limit road, there's someone doing 95 k's an hour. It seems safer to me to accelerate as quickly as possible around that car. Sitting on 110, if that's all you went to, you're spending longer on the other side of the road. So little things like that. It's still illegal to go over 110, but I'm sure many people would just go slightly past 110 to get around that car. Imagine if every time you did that, there was some alert that went off to your insurance company or the police to say, Mr. Dickerson just went over the speed limit again. So it's pretty scary. Now, I suppose there's a couple of things here. One, we should be more vigilant about those different warnings. But can we actually do something about it if we don't like that? Or do we just have to say we'll suck it up and live with it? Now, some companies, I know Tesla, for example, does have the option to say share your data or don't share your data. I hope that when you say don't share your data, it doesn't get shared. I've always shared my data in the past because I want the car companies to learn about the car's behaviour to improve it. But I really don't want it to be shared with the world out there. So you're right. The conspiracy theorists
the
now.
Insurance companies.
There, that's right. The police and the insurance companies. Share it with my mother, that's fine. But police and insurance companies. So for those conspiracy theorists out there now, they can go berserk.
Go nuts. Airbnb has revolutionised the short stay market over the past 15 years or so. Staying in a stranger's home was a bit weird the first time, but it's the new normal for many families on holidays these days. But a couple of dodgy cases with hidden cameras really tarnished the game for a while for Airbnb. There came a very weighty obligation to maintain privacy for the guest and integrity for their business, which is not so easy when you're running their business on, or when they are running their business on other people's turf. Matt, what's the background here and how can homeowners protect their stuff without camera surveillance?
We just become so accustomed to it now, don't we?
Yeah.
On TV shows, on detective shows, I don't know how they ever solved a crime before cameras and DNA. How did they do detective shows in the years gone by?
I tell you what, and the classic is a show came out of the UK called The Hunted. I don't know if you've ever seen it before.
No.
It's where it's like a game show and you've just got to try and escape these hunters who are using surveillance cameras and you've got like 28 days to survive without being caught.
I think you just go and find an underground bunker and have enough food to get you by.
Yeah, that's good until the paranoia sets in. It's a great show. Anyway, look, we're not here to promote TV shows. This is a really interesting concept. They've got to protect their stuff, but now we've got these privacy issues. And
I actually think it works in both ways. If I go and stay on Airbnb and then I have a lovely time there, stay there for a couple of days, weekend, whatever, and then I get a message back from the host to say
there's damage.
Yeah, actually, it looks like the TV's damaged or there's a great big hole in the wall or whatever. Well, I didn't do it. Well, you stayed there and when you moved in it wasn't there and you moved out and it was there. Well, can you show me on the CCTV where I did that damage? Because maybe it happened afterwards. Maybe the cleaner did it or whatever. I've got no protection then if I've got no cameras. Not a lot of Airbnb hosts have been putting cameras inside the houses, but some have.
But I've heard some dodgy things about them being put in private places.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. I think I don't have a problem at all if someone's got a camera. If I'm in an Airbnb, they've got a camera in the kitchen. I'm a little bit more concerned if it's in the bathroom, but to be honest, if they want to look at me naked, then good luck, knock yourself out.
But watch you doing your dance in the nude. Anyway, sorry.
That's right. bathroom, bedroom, obviously that's where some issues have occurred. Now, the rules with Airbnb have been, no, you can't have it in private areas. You've been allowed to have it in common areas. But because some people have still had it in some of these areas, Airbnb have said now, from the end of April, 30th of April is the deadline, no more cameras anywhere inside an Airbnb.
And that's worldwide.
That's worldwide. They've just gone, that's it. We're over these idiots out there. A minuscule percentage of people would have taken advantage of this or had cameras where they shouldn't. So we're over it. Just blanket ban. Now,
But how hard for them to police that when it's other people's homes? And it's really hard. Yeah, they're not sort of checking out people's homes when they're doing this.
No, but they're relying on the guests there. And if a guest finds a camera, sees a camera, suspects a camera, they're relying on them to report them. And then, of course, they can be suspended from being a Airbnb host. But there's a lot of other casual stay companies out there. So you move on from Airbnb to the next one. Again, if you're really this way inclined, if you're really trying to set up a camera somewhere, you'll probably work out some other way to get around it. But I think it's interesting. Now, outside, they've said, fine, you can have cameras outside. Around the home, you can have a doorbell with a camera, as long as none of those cameras even glance into a window from the outside. So have it on the outside of the house. And let's face it, if someone's breaking in, that's better. But if I'm a guest in an Airbnb, I kind of feel a bit more comfortable that there's some cameras around the outside because someone's less likely to break in while I'm there, for example.
For sure.
I remember staying at Airbnb in France, actually, and I sometimes, and I was this time, sometimes actually carry my own little security camera where it's just an internet-connected one with a SIM card, and you just drop it in the apartment. You're staying in there, so you get any alerts if anything happens in there. And I felt a bit more comfortable about it this time because the neighbours in there, talking to them, they were in a bit of a panic and they had the door open when we walked up and just chatting to us. They'd been broken into, had their passport stolen. So pretty ugly scenes when you're overseas with no passport.
That's right.
So it's scary. One thing that's interesting, so privacy advocates have said this is fantastic. They've applauded the move, but I've read that and I looked at a few different reports on this and privacy advocates. So who are privacy advocates? Can I just say I'm a privacy advocate? Is that my job title? Or?
No. What's the opposite of being an advocate? I'm against privacy.
That's right. So I don't know who privacy advocates are. I don't know how you become one. Is there a job application?
Yeah.
Job one.
But there's a badge.
Maybe that's right. I get to go and show it off to people. But privacy advocates have applauded the move. There is a thing called the Surveillance Technology Oversight Project, acronym STOP, a civil rights group, and they've praised the policy as well. And they are a serious civil rights group because they've got an acronym. So they've thought about it. They haven't just gone, let's get together and call us a privacy advocate group with no really good sexy
I wonder
name.
how they came up with that because they think of the word stop and then go, we've got to fit words to meet this acronym. Or
they may have, and then that's called a backronym.
A backronym.
When you come up with the acronym first and then come up with the words to match, that's a backronym. So probably because they like the idea of stopping the surveillance happening. So they maybe
sends a message.
Yeah, it does. It sends a message. So anyway, it's interesting, and I think this is one of those things we talk about often. Legal frameworks in various jurisdictions are evolving to address the technology. We didn't have to worry about this a decade or 2 decades ago. People didn't have security cameras everywhere because they were too expensive. Only really the Prime Minister's or the President's apartment or lodgings had security cameras. It was a bit flash when you saw a security camera. You go, who lives here? The President? Well, actually, he does. So you've got that.
I think Airbnb's only been going for about 15 years, maybe a little bit longer than that, but yeah.
Probably right. So they haven't been around that long, but now it's just so easy. The cameras are so good and the quality's so good and they're so cost effective. Anyway, this is the changing world we're living in there. I'd like to know, I should do some research one day and find out how many security cameras have been sold across the world because it would be a staggering number, surely.
Employed for a particular look, the career of every model is a tenuous one. From your first assignment, your days are numbered though. When a job opportunity arises, you've got to be there for it because the cooling effect on a hot model happens very quickly. Now, sometimes that means you have to be in 2 places at once, which used to be impossible, but one model has found a high-tech solution for the problem. Matt?
Well, I actually want to hear how you're going to pronounce this name because I'll spell it and I've got a particular way that I think to pronounce it. This model's name is Alex, Alex, Sandrah.
Are there any like symbols like an @ symbol in there or a
none of those, but I want to hear how you pronounce it because I've got it.
Oh, it needs to be done breathily.
That's what I'm thinking.
Alexsandrah.
You're on the same thought.
Or maybe with an echo. Alexsandrah.
I wasn't thinking of the Echo, but I did think, especially with the X and S in the middle and the H at the end, I thought it was
Just conjuring Zoolander memes and stuff. They're going ballistic in my head right now.
So I was thinking of that. I was thinking, Alexsandrah. Maybe it should be triple H to end it all. So anyway, you need something catchy. You need something to grab people's attention.
Yep.
She's got a name that everyone has to say, Alexsandrah, and then she's now
Name goes with the look. But
that's right. Now
she's also got
a virtual AI generated version of herself. Now, I love the concept. She says, well, I'm a model, I'm physical, I go and wear certain products or show off certain products that people are trying to sell, and I'm using...
She's more than just a name, she's a look.
She's a look, that's right. So I'm using that to my advantage, and I've cultivated that look over the years. But she's worried about the future of her career with AI. Now, we've already seen some examples. Levi actually got... not a little bit of trouble, but certainly a bit of discussion around Levi when they used purely AI-generated models for some of their jeans they were selling. People weren't overly impressed with that. So she said, if you're going to use AI, why not use not just a random AI nobody, why not use an AI version of Alexsandrah? And that seems like a much better option. So her idea is it's a safety net for her future. She can offer her services via a virtual version. So, for example, they need her in Paris to advertise a product, chewing gum. Say, for example, I don't know, model chewing gum, but a packet of chewing gum in a picture that's going on a billboard. Well, don't fly all the way to Paris and stand there in the studio holding up your chewing gum and smile nicely for the 10 minutes that it probably takes longer than half an hour for the photo shoot. Just use the AI version of her and have the chewing gum photo taken with the AI version. So she still gets paid some money.
Yeah.
Probably not as much as if she went there physically. I was going to
say, rather than getting the full $1 million for the 10 minutes, that she might only charge $500,000.
Exactly right. The studio or the company gets to save a bit of money because they're not paying the full price. She gets to stay at home, but she could probably generate more money, even though she might charge less, because she can be, as you say, in Paris, in London, in New York, doing modelling gigs all at the same time. I don't think she's thinking about the catwalk yet, but holograms, maybe.
It's only a matter of time. Yeah. It's only a matter of time.
But I think the first thing would be photographs. Second thing would be possibly doing some videos of someone, because they're pretty good now. Not perfect, but they're pretty good. And then it leaves her to just take the physical job. So she can take the catwalk job because meanwhile her AI virtual twin is out there doing it. There's a company who's creating this. The whole idea is it's a company called The Digitals, and of course it's spelt differently. It's got two I's, so The Digitals. And they've created Alexsandrah's virtual twin. They've got another model called Shudu. Now Shudu is said to be the first digital supermodel. I don't know how you become a supermodel. Is it just how much you charge, or is there something particular? But
ask Naomi Campbell.
Yeah, that's right. So the first digital supermodel, so he created, Cameron Wilson from the Digitals, created Shudu, but this one is a bit different because this one's based on a real person. So it's probably a bit more challenging because you've got to make sure that the AI twin looks like the real person, whereas with Shudu it was just whatever, however it looks is the way it looks. It does create some interesting questions, a whole range of different ideas come to mind. Do you grow up to want to be a model? If you have the talent and the look to be a model, do you need to worry about it anymore?
Could you be an average-looking model but make a super hot-looking AI version of yourself?
So no longer is it for the people that are tall and good-looking. So now we've made modelling for everyone, maybe. So there's all sorts of things there. So
let's hope for you yet.
Thank you, James. You're so kind. You're talking about my height or my looks?
No, just everything. The package.
Everything. It's getting worse. Lucky this is an audio medium. Anyway, keep an eye out for Alexsandrah.
Now, you may have heard quite a bit about quantum computers in recent times. Their potential to increase processing power is enormous and may totally revolutionise how computing is done. That being said, the development of quantum computers has moved faster than the need for them. It seems that we've an astounding tool now with without an actual practical purpose at this stage. This is a bizarre conundrum, Matt. So Google have launched a competition to find a purpose for quantum computers, beyond playing the most hyped up game of Call of Duty you ever saw? You got any ideas?
I've got some ideas. I'm not going to talk about them though because there's a $5 million prize pool after the show.
That's all right.
We'll get together and throw around some of those ideas.
So, yeah, you can play some awesome COD games, maybe some awesome Minecraft perhaps.
And I'm not sure, but I reckon they're looking for something a little bit higher level than that. They're trying to use something that could change the world maybe, and maybe Call of Duty does that. But it is interesting. And just let me go back a second. I do like to just use this little example of quantum computing if people aren't really aware of what it is. And it is complicated. Most people are understanding of the 1 or 0, the binary nature of computers. And I think about a coin, flip a coin in the air, it's going to land typically head or a tail. So it's a binary outcome. The quantum computer
Just while you're on that, you know there are 10 types of people in the world. Those who understand binary and those who don't. Thank you very much. Keep going.
So you flip the coin in the air, and while it's in the air, you could think of that coin as being heads and tails at the same time while it's in the air, because it's not either head or tail. Lands on the ground, that's when it's a head or a tail, so 1 or a 0. Quantum computing is a bit like when the coin's in the air. It's ones and zeros at the same time.
Wow.
So it increases the computing power incredibly. Harnessing that is a challenge, but so far, any quantum computers that have been created have been used to solve abstract, difficult, incredibly difficult mathematical problems. So they can say, look, there's a supercomputer that took 10 minutes to solve that problem. My quantum computer did it in 5 seconds. But it's not really that practical. It's showing off how fast you can add up some numbers, but maybe a bit more complicated than adding up some numbers, but showing off how fast. So now what Google, and there's a company called X Prize that they've engaged to run this competition, they've said, let's see if we can get some real world applications. Maybe not Call of Duty, maybe not an abstract mathematical problem. How can we come up with things that we need to solve, that you need the power of quantum computing to solve that? So they want to see some new algorithms, for example, that address real-world issues that you need a quantum computer to solve, not just something where a supercomputer could do it in 10 minutes. Well, let a supercomputer do it.
Yeah.
What are some things that are really difficult to do that you need a quantum computer to do that? And, of course, the first things I think of, I will share my ideas, climate modelling is incredibly complicated. Can you come up with something where you use climate modelling and you need that power of quantum computers to really analyse that and just then tweak some variables? If we have the temperature of the Earth go up by 0.5 of a degree, tell me in 50 years' time what that's going to do to the population of whales, for example. Get down into that nitty-gritty. But I'm sure everyone else is thinking about that sort of climate modelling. They're probably looking for other things. How can we come up with something that benefits society out of this wonderful quantum computer? Is it really just a mine's bigger than yours sort of competition with quantum computing, or can it get to let's solve some problems?
I wonder what it can do for early diagnosis or treatment of things like the brain diseases that we're learning about, with Alzheimer's and dementia and whatnot, and the cancer.
We've got some big things that we'd love to solve. So medical issues. So you talk about lots of different things. Dementia, absolutely right. When we think about dementia or Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, they're diseases we're getting because the medical system is keeping us alive longer. You didn't have much dementia when the average, go back a century, the average life expectancy was 50.
Yeah.
But now the average life expectancy is maybe 75, 80. We're seeing a lot of dementia. So those sort of health issues, absolutely. What about energy? Some of the energy problems we've got to solve across the world.
Yeah.
Environmental conservation. Your favourite is going to be material science. What sort of problems can we solve with material science? You talked about engineers at the beginning of the show, tinkering. Well, imagine the tinkering power in a theoretical sense. You throw a problem at a quantum computer about material science, let it go through and test in a theoretical way a whole bunch of different combinations of products to find a material that should have properties that are better than other properties. So I was actually thinking that maybe we could just pick the lottery numbers for next week. Is that good enough? I wouldn't need the $5 million prize money, though. If I could just do that each week, I think I'd be okay. So there are some big issues we could do. We've got
teleportation.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Why not? Absolutely.
Well, we dreamed it up in Star Trek or whatever. Now we could probably, I wonder if we could do it. So apparently it's not about being able to get particles to move. We've been able to move particles across space by teleportation. It's just about rearranging them when they get there in the right way.
Well, it's probably both ends, isn't it? Decomposing them at one end and then rearranging them at the other end. They seem like the slight issues there. But the bandwidth you'd need as well, because there's a fair bit of data in a human. So there's a fair bit of bandwidth you need.
Quantum
We'll
computers,
just
they're doing it.
teleport that person, but it'll take 3 years to teleport them.
And they might come out as a mush at the end.
That's right. Or what was the show, The Fly, when there was a fly that flew into the actual pod as
Jeff
it went?
Goldblum.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
There we go.
So now we've got a bit of time, though. So we don't have to do it today after the show. We've got 3 years. 3 year time frame.
And will they $5 million for any good idea?
No.
For the best idea?
No, not even that. There's a $5 million prize pool. So we might have one great idea, but there might be another five. We're going to get $1 million.
Come on, Google, you got more money than that, surely.
I thought the same thing. I thought $5 million, because I thought when I first read the story it was a $5 million prize, but no, prize pool. So I agree with you. They've got more money than that. They would get in advertising revenue that much in a few seconds. So surely you can step up the game a little bit. But have a look at that. If you've got some ideas, go and see what you can do.
Better than what we generated just then?
Well, that'd be difficult, wouldn't it? but maybe more refined ideas than we generated just then. They probably want more than just 10 words and scribble on the back of a napkin. Here you go, here's my idea. Where's my $5 million?
Solve this. Yeah. In an age where sustainability is a marketable quantity, the plastic recycling industry has come under fire for its inefficiencies and its shortcomings in some cases. While people happily fill their yellow bins with a warm, fuzzy feeling, it may come as a surprise to you that reconditioning of some plastics is extremely limited. It's one reason why there's been quite a bit of grant cash being directed into research in this area. And there's been some good news arising from the landfill recently. Matt, what's the hubbub about PET recycling?
Well, the first thing I want to say about PET is it's difficult to pronounce. Polyethylene, I got the hang of that one.
Yes.
But terephthalate?
Terephthalate.
Terephthalate. Yeah. So you just ignore the TH in the middle of the word there and take the PH in all F?
It's a th. Oh, it's a phthalate.
Yeah, right.
Terephthalate.
Terephthalate.
Yeah.
Give it to me a bit easier. No wonder they just call it PET. So it is, PET plastics have been around for a while. Most bottles you would get, most water bottles, etc., have got PET. And you're right, people feel good about themselves. They get their PET bottle and they drink their water bottle and they put it in their yellow bin. We have yellow bins here, whatever colour you have in your particular area. But in Australia, only about 14% of that actually gets recycled. And there's a whole range of reasons for that. One of the reasons is PET degradation, often due to contaminated plastics. So people feel good about themselves, they put it in there, but some people get it a bit wrong and the recycling goes in there and then it gets contaminated and they go, so we try and recycle it. It's not as good a quality, a couple of recycled versions and that's it. What this particular company called Paco Industries has come up with is a new solvent that they say means you can infinitely recycle. And infinite's a big number. It's not actually a number.
Cool.
It's a big concept. So they say that you can just keep doing it over and over and over without losing any quality. And the way they do that effectively is that the solvent removes contaminants from PET. So you're getting the straight PET, the polymer chain retains its integrity, so you can keep recycling it over and over and over, which sounds fantastic. So far, they've been able to produce about 1,000 tonnes of plastic via this method, but they want to get to the stage where they can build up the facility. It's at the University of New South Wales, their test facility. They want to build it up to handle 20 to 30,000 tonnes daily, which is fantastic. Now, that'd be about 5% of our total plastic production market. Now, that would be one plant, presumably if it works and everything works to plan, then you could build a number of these around Australia, and suddenly that 14% could go to a much higher number, which would make it be practical as well as us feeling good about putting it into the yellow bin. So I like the idea that we kind of come up with some ideas and they sound good, but we just keep refining them and getting them better and better until finally one day we'll nail it.
And the recycling industry is getting a lot of money pumped into it. There's a lot of it. At this stage, PET is still made from crude oil, I think, largely, and so these crude oil companies have got everything to invest in this PET recycling, so people will buy more PET products.
Well, they want the other way, don't they? They don't want the PET to be recycled.
Well, no. So if you've got faith in PET, then you'll still end up selling it. If people don't have faith in PET, then they stop buying any of it.
I was being too cynical, wasn't I?
Yeah.
I do apologise to those crude oil companies out there.
Who are actually warm-hearted and only interested in everyone's success.
That's right. Now, you are right, the recycling industry, though, is big. $19 billion annually in Australia. It's worth 94,000 people employed in the industry. But the big challenge, I think, which is where your comment comes in there too, is that getting to the stage where recycled materials are cost competitive with the virgin versions of those plastic.
Yeah.
That was virgin versions of those plastics.
I got it.
Good. And that's, I suppose, as we get to the stage where it's harder to get crude oil, it's harder to find some of that crude oil, it's harder to actually get it. Maybe you've got to go further into different parts of the ocean to get some of that crude oil or wherever you're mining that might be. That's probably going to get more expensive over time. Solutions like this might actually make it cheaper to recycle, which obviously is what we're all after. So good move, and I just think it's worthwhile following along to see where they go with this particular concept.
Yeah. In the world of solar cell technology, the holy grail is improving the efficiency while keeping the prices down. There are panels that have been developed with over 40% efficiency, but folks, they are prohibitively expensive to say the least. The panels on your roof, they're probably a smidge over 20% efficient. So when a company is able to develop a product with efficiency approaching 30% at a marketable price, that constitutes some big news, folks. And Matt, there is some big news coming out of the National University of Singapore.
And I love how companies claim a world record. So they're claiming they've got a world record.
Whether it is or not, but that's all right.
Well, I don't know that Guinness has put the stamp on it, but 27.1% they're saying they've got a perovskite silicon tandem solar cell.
Very
Now,
cool.
you're right. Most solar panels on rooftops would be 20%, maybe 22%. That'd be about it.
Yeah.
Some probably some older ones.
Low 20s, yeah.
Yeah, some might even be down to the 15s, depending how long ago you got your solar panels. They certainly are getting better all the time. But if you can start increasing that, and let's say solar panels today were 20%, and let's say tomorrow we turn them into 27%, that's a 35% increase in our solar production. Have all the same solar panels. Now, I realise you're not going to go and replace all those tomorrow, but if you had the same surface area of solar panels, suddenly you're getting a 35% increase in the amount of power that we're generating. And we do see that. I've seen solar farms. There's a large solar farm a couple of 100 kilometres away from us that was built about 2012. And there's another one not that far away from there that was built a couple of years later. And it was essentially half the size in terms of the number of hectares it was taken up, and the power production was more. So in a space of about 3 or 4 years,
Yeah, isn't it amazing?
they hadn't quite doubled it, but they'd certainly got to the stage where they'd increased the efficiency quite dramatically. That's going back a few years, but here we are now, 27.1%. So that's pretty exciting. They actually think, the university researchers said that they think using this same concept that you can get to a 50% efficiency. Now, that's a big claim.
Yeah.
I'm not convinced they'll get there in the
They want to
immediate
sell
short
a
term.
patent. That's what they want to
They
do.
probably do. That's exactly right. But when you consider the amount of solar energy that hits the Earth, so at the equator at midday, you get approximately 1 kilowatt of power hitting the Earth per square metre. So you apply that now. Again, that's at midday at the equator. So you apply that as you go around the Earth and you apply that different times of the day. We've got a lot of solar energy that hits this Earth. So you don't really need to get that efficiency much higher. And I wrote an article, it must have been 15 years ago now, that talked about all we needed in Australia for all the power we needed for our production, and this is going back with older efficiencies, was 1,000 square kilometres. We've got 7.6 million square kilometres in Australia. Find 1,000 square kilometres somewhere of solar panels. That's it. We've got all the power now. I'm ignoring the night time. I'm ignoring transmission, all the rest of it. It was just a thought experiment. How much will we need? What surface area will we need? So it's not much in the whole scheme of things. I say not much. That'd be a big chunk of solar panels, 1,000 square kilometres.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when you start to get to the stage where you're getting 27.1%, that's pretty exciting. So they're using multi-junction solar cells. They've got layers of different photovoltaic materials. So they're investigating different ways. And they've tried some of this before. Typically, they've used bromide, though, in between these layers, which has been a bit limiting. They've actually changed to using cyanate now, and that seems to have been the big breakthrough and getting the cells to work with that. So it sounds to me like there's a fair bit of change happening there, and things that we accepted as the norm or the best way to do it, that's constantly changing, as happens with science.
Good vision is easy to take for granted. Of the 5 senses, most humans use their vision as much as they do taste, touch, smell and hearing combined. But giving vision to the visually impaired remains elusive. While bionic vision is still a Hollywood dream, we're getting closer, Matt.
We are getting closer to some sort of bionic vision, but no, not necessarily bionic. We're getting Glide, the guiding robot. And it's something that's quite interesting when you think about a guide dog, and guide dogs look lovely, and I've seen people using guide dogs. Most people don't put a cost associated with guide dogs. $75,000 is what it costs to get a guide dog from a puppy to actually being able to be used in the real world. So
that's a big deal.
And not all guide dogs. So you get a litter of pups and they go into a guide dog school. I don't know what it's called, but guide dog school sounds good. And not all of those pups are good enough to use.
That's right.
So it's quite expensive. Now, this particular company called Glidance, Glidance, the CEO is visually impaired himself. No surprise there that people like to create things to solve problems that they're acutely aware of. So he's created Glide, the guiding robot. It uses sensors and cameras to detect obstacles and guide visually impaired people around. It's a bit like a vacuum cleaner. It's got wheels and it moves around, 1.5 kilos in weight, and basically it'll help you move around in terms of a normal environment. Still not as good as a guide dog. Stairs, it doesn't do stairs.
It's like a Dalek.
It's like a Dalek. It falls over stairs. If you tried to use it out in the real world, if you didn't have places in the footpath to go down to a roadway, again, that'd be a problem for it. It can't just drop off the edge of a footpath. So guide dogs inherently have got nature on their side, but this is a good step. It must have been impressive because Stevie Wonder, the very famous artist, launched this at the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas.
Very good.
So he must have been impressed enough with it or was paid enough money to do it. But it's something that you've got a spontaneous mode, you've got a directive mode. So spontaneous is just move me around where I need to go. Directive says, I know the layout of where I'm going, take me around that area. But we still, I suppose, are progressing there. So maybe not a bionic eye, but getting to the stage where we're using some technology to help people around the visually impaired, because there are 253 million people around the world with visual impairment. So if you can crack that nut and come up with some sort of solution for them, you're probably going okay.
Quantum computing?
Maybe. There you go. They just keep rolling out, James.
It was only ever going to be a matter of time, folks. How is your backyard bunker coming along? The US military have been using drones for remote warfare for quite some time, but they tend to be controlled from a station safely in on-home territory, and therefore the operator is not privy to all the conditions of the battle zone, which is a bit of a disadvantage. Now, the Pentagon, always seeking the upper hand, is looking to employ AI now in piloting drones in the battlefield. Matt, this was covered in the Terminator movies, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Doesn't anyone in the Pentagon watch movies anymore?
Well, they probably do. That's where they got their ideas from this. And they've got a thing called the Collaborative Combat Aircraft Project, the CCA project. They didn't think about it enough. CCA, it's not an acronym, it's initialism. I want an acronym, okay? So can you go back and do that again? They've engaged 5 companies to develop AI-powered drones. Now, some people will think about AI-powered drones, and what they think of is a remote controlled drone, exactly as you mentioned there. But no, these aren't remote controlled. There's not someone sitting somewhere in a nice safe spot going along flying these planes. They are AI-powered drones. That gets a bit scary. Forget about the conspiracy theory of reporting your information to an insurance company. The conspiracy theory now of planes flying around with no human in control of that plane.
Terminator.
That's it, you're talking about it. Now, these are designed to accompany human-piloted jets. So I'm on a mission, I've got my jet, I'm a pilot, I'm going along, and around me for my support, maybe my communications, maybe some forward surveillance, are some AI drones around me, jet-powered AI drones around me, weapon-enabled AI-powered drones
Not a
around
problem.
me.
Can I just say at this stage, I welcome our AI overlords, and I want you to know that you have an ally in me and my family.
And my close friends. So it does get scary when you start thinking about it. They're not that serious about it because they're only spending $6 billion on this particular project.
So they just raided the cookie jar.
That's right. They just said, look around, there's some few coins at the bottom there. So you've got 5 companies working on this, and they've got a whole range of different solutions. So you've got one, for example, that's already got one of their solutions that can fly 3,700 kilometres on a mission. It'll fly just below the speed of sound. Wow. You've got some different ones there. Now, this is the thing that scared me even more. Their ambition within the next 5 years, this is the Pentagon, the Air Force, is to produce 1,000 AI drones. Can you just imagine 1,000 of these and someone gets in and
I
says,
can imagine it because I've seen the movie.
that's right. And someone gets control of these 1,000 drones and says, let's go and have some fun here. The idea is, again, to either accompany some people flying jets or even some of the things like the B-21 bomber, F-35, that type of thing. But even when I say jet-powered drones, even that somehow scares me just a lot.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. we do talk about wartime being something that I suppose advances technology. Now, we're not in wartime necessarily at the moment, but military does advance technology in a whole range of different ways. And I know that some facial recognition technology back in 2021, the military did progress that in some different ways. They only spent $800,000 on developing that technology. Now we're talking $6 billion. What are we going to end up with? Quantum computing again? Maybe we suggest quantum computing for this solution.
And while we're causing a stir about AI, this next story is unlikely to make too many people any happier. Matt, in the interests of keeping people informed without promoting an absolute tosser, one particular idiot has decided to soup up some of Hitler's speeches using AI. I guess that's one way to disappoint your parents.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I'm in two minds about this. Obviously, we want to learn from history. We want to learn from the things that happened in the past. And so Hitler's famous 1939 Reichstag speech is something that is in German, because Hitler was speaking in German, and people look at that and translate that, and basically the beginning of World War II, if you like. So some people have taken that speech and they've used AI to translate that into AI and then have it done, translate that into English, not into AI. Used AI to translate that to English, and then you've got Hitler delivering the speech with all his passion, with all his verve, and calling to arms, literally, and doing that in English. So my first thought was, why are we doing this? Why are we even thinking about getting this up and letting people listen to it? But again, then, okay, maybe some people now in our youth, if you like, maybe don't know about the terrible crimes committed by Hitler. So maybe looking at this and actually learning what happened after this speech, that isn't such a bad thing. But of course, some people use it in different ways.
I've actually said that because I really do enjoy watching good speeches, like good orators at their job, like Martin Luther King.
Yep.
His famous speech about "I have a dream." That's an awesome speech. There's also some of John F. Kennedy stuff. Really good orators that could really whip their audience into a fervour, and Hitler does that, right? But so if you don't translate what he's saying, if you just listen to the music of his voice, he's actually a very powerful speaker. It's no wonder that he had the following that he got. However, it's when you start translating the message that people go, oh, yeah, I'm okay with that message too. And you think, oh, no, we've gone a step too far.
Well, he must have been a powerful speaker, because the crimes that were committed by people under Hitler's control, you just can't think that people would do that to other people. We're probably getting way off topic here from a technology perspective.
Anyway, that's for another time.
But the interesting part is that 11 Labs, a company called 11 Labs, which I've played with some voice cloning technology, some voice production technology, just to see how good it is. But 11 Labs are responsible for this. Now, whether that's just an advertising process for them to show off how good they are, but 11 Labs was also the one, so I think they're a little bit naughty, because they were the ones who did the impersonation of Joe Biden's voice when he rang people and said, don't vote in the upcoming elections. So they were clever enough to take Joe Biden's voice and give him a different message. In this case, they're not giving Hitler a different message. They're just translating it into English as if Hitler was speaking English during the whole process. We've seen badly dubbed movies, but it's not that person's voice. So the difference here is that it's Hitler's voice. So the strength of that message that you talked about with the melody of his voice or the music of his voice,
the cadence and everything, it
still captures all that, but in English, which a dubbing will never do.
Yeah.
So quite incredible.
Yeah, I question the guy's motives.
Yeah, well, that's right. It's maybe not saying, let's learn from history, guys. Maybe there's some other motives for it. Yeah. But I suppose the thing that I thought about for this one, and I did think several times whether I should actually do this story or not, but I thought rather than ignore it and pretend it doesn't exist, 15 million people view this speech by the time we went to air.
Exactly right.
Well, sorry, by the time we did the recording. By the time it goes to air, it'll be much more than that. So people are out there doing it. And I suppose what I'd like to say to people is just be aware of some of the things that we see now, and maybe they're not always what they seem. Sit back and just think about it.
We've got to think about the purpose, the reason for the delivery,
The purpose and whether or not it's legitimate. In this case, it is, but as standards move on as well, you need to think about it in context. So it is quite scary, though, what can be produced with technology now. How long do we need you and I for, James?
Well, that's all we have for you today, folks. Looking down the running sheet, all I can see are a couple of doodles drawn in crayon and a whole lot of white space. We could always run some quiet time for meditation for you, but that would be taking procrastination to another level, folks, so we'd better just move on. Thanks for another absolutely cracking tech talk, Matt.
I'm actually thinking about going and creating an alter ego, Matthew with 3 W's. So it'll be
Matthew.
And maybe James with a few S's. So Matthew and James. James.
Can you throw an H in there too?
Oh, yeah. Maybe JH.
Jams. Can I be Jams?
That's right. That'd be perfect. If Alexsandrah can have a H on the end, why can't James have a H as a second letter?
Well, I'm off to brainstorm some more suggestions for the quantum computers. So far, all I've got really is 3D Tetris, but I think that one's been done already.
Probably is. But solving 3D Tetris really quickly might be good as well.
Or maybe some really, really, really long PowerPoint slideshows. This is going to take a bit more work, though, I think. Thanks for tuning in once again, folks, to another episode of Tech Talk with Matthew Dickinson in full Technicolor. Tech Talk is produced in all 256 hues of colour for your listening pleasure, and we hope that you've enjoyed absolutely every one of them. I'm James Eddy, wishing you all the best for the next 7 days, and I hope to catch you once again in a week's time with another exceptional episode of Tech Talk. Bring a friend, why don't you? There's enough for everybody.